What's up, guys? We are at Alchemy at Residency Road, Bangalore. So I have here Nate, the brewmaster here. So today we're going to talk about Bière de Garde. So what's up, Nate? How's it going?
Yeah, no, thanks for coming down. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Yeah, you would have seen the last week or two. We've just launched the second Bière de Garde since Alchemy's been in business.
I remember the first one. It was like 2 years ago.
A couple of years ago. Yeah, and to be honest with you, which I'm really happy about, it's probably, if not the most requested beer that I get asked to rebrew. So,
Wow.
which is really cool because it's a style that's not so common.
It's such an underrated style, right? It's just
It
like
is.
not
And
many people brew it, and you can't really find the classic examples outside in a retail liquor store.
No, and you know, it's a style that you know, for me personally, I've brewed a few over my years brewing, and I think what really piqued my interest with Bière de Garde is like once I discovered saison, and then this offshoot to, I guess, in a sense, almost a saison style, but very different beers. So I always wanted to give my little riff and a bit of a nod as well to the Bière de Garde style because it wasn't so common.
So when people talk about farmhouse ales, so if two things show up, it's either Bière de Garde or saison,
Yeah,
and they're like quite different from each other.
yeah. So
it's one of the well-known styles from France.
Yep, from the northern France region, and like these beers were brewed to. So Bière de Garde means like to store, right?
Beer to keep,
to lager,
right.
to keep, and typically they would be fermented with top fermenting yeast strains. But again, there's no hard rule to that.
Yeah, I heard like people brew that with lager yeast too, as long as the temperatures are like maybe like 14, 16 degrees Celsius.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, sort of like lager fermented warmer.
Like it's a warmer lager and colder ale temperatures.
Colder ale, yeah. Which we see in some modern styles, styles that are trending.
Yeah, I mean,
at
even
the moment, that same principle of like the lager fermentations.
Yeah, I mean, you have like IPLs, cold IPAs, and
exactly.
you have California Common, like steam beer, that is warm fermented lager yeast.
So actually touching on that one, a little bit of a side route on that is my first ever commercial Bière de Garde. I actually fermented with the California Common strain.
Oh, wow.
Fermented it cooler.
Yeah.
And, you know, it turned out really well. It's a bit of a hoppier, I guess you could say, a hoppier Bière de Garde. I mean, this particular Bière de Garde, one thing you'll notice straight off the bat is like the color.
Right.
So it's more of a copper color. So traditionally, Bière de Gardes could be anything like similar to
like
saisons.
Blonde
it could be a blonde, a pale golden,
brown.
right through brown, right through to copper. So the first batch that I brewed was for the cooler months here in Bangalore.
Darker, right? It was darker.
Same, very similar. The recipes are a little bit different, little tweaks here and there, but similar color. You know, I had this one's a shade or two darker. But yeah, so because it's the end of year, the cooler months, always wanted a beer that was a bit more warming.
Right.
And also to play on like some specialty malts as well, like just sort of get a bit of that dried fruit character, a little bit of complexity in the grist as well. Yeah.
So if someone comes up to you and how do you describe this beer to them? Bière de Garde.
Man, like for me, it's like it's still at its heart. I find it's still clean like a lager. So it's you know, it retains that clean character.
So it doesn't have like any specific like the fruity esters like you can.
For the yeast, so both batches I've done, I've actually used two different yeast strains. I was about to say mixed fermentation. It is in a sense, but it's not at the same time. Like, so I'll pitch both batches. I'll pitch the farmhouse strain or a Belgian yeast strain, just to coax out a bit of the esters, phenolics, and just let that do its thing in the first couple of days. And then I'll pitch the secondary strain. I kind of underpitch those Belgian strains just to sort of get most out of it. And then just to know that, you know, everything's all good with attenuation, I'll pitch a secondary, quite a neutral strain, to be honest with you. and that just like helps attenuate it. And because these beers too, the nice thing is you do get that malt sweetness, you get that fruity sweetness to it from the malt, but at the
Right.
same time they shouldn't be cloying or they shouldn't be heavy going. They should be very drinkable, even at the ABV like saisons. They're not as dry as a saison, but this Bière de Garde's up by
So
6.5%.
this can like vary from 6.5 to 8 something,
Yeah, they
right?
can
It's
get
8.5.
stronger.
Yeah.
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 But they typically go a bit on the higher alcohol
So this
side.
is
Yeah,
more like a malt accented beer. Like you get a lot of malt flavors, but it's
yeah,
not cloying, like you said.
exactly. It should still retain that drinkability and just have that interest of
Mm.
those that malt character coming through. Not so much about the hops, right? But you know what I mean. It's a bit more about that malty
So the
character.
hops are like just in the background, giving a little bit of bitterness,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of that spicy herbal character.
Exactly, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Those classic, more noble
Yeah.
varietals you typically see in
I
France and Belgium.
yeah.
Your Styrian Goldens and such like that. At least traditionally,
Yeah, some
yeah,
of the traditional versions, like I heard, there's like this French Brewer's Gold hop,
yeah.
and also obviously, like you said, could be any of those noble varieties like
Mm.
Hallertau and Strizzelspalt.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
Slovenian hops and
Yeah.
Goldings and yeah,
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 for sure. And it's just, I mean, again, just to balance a bit of that malt sweetness, just with those subtleties, I guess you could say, of those like, earthy or spicy hop character. So, I mean, this particular batch, I actually only used one specialty malt. And from memory, it was about 5 or 6% of that particular malt. Everything else in there is just your base malt but a blend. Um,
So, what malt flavors can we expect out of this
so
beer?
this is a blend of Pilsner malt. I'm happy to say what malts like Pilsner, Munich, and Vienna. A bit
Oh,
of like a
sweet. Yeah,
third of
yeah,
each.
yeah.
Again, just for like those sort of layers, because you still want a bit of that hints of that sort of nice
Bready, toasty, and
breadiness, a little bit toasty. But I also added 10% rye malt, and there's about 5% wheat. So typically, Beard de Gardes won't have such a malt bill. They'll be very simple. But like I thought I'd just sort of play around, and that's a bit of a riff on that first batch a couple of years ago, where
right.
because it's a bit of a winter beer, if you want to call it that, I sort of wanted a bit of those layers of different base malts and the
Yep,
odd
yep.
specialty or two. And with that rye and wheat, the beauty of that too, it's given that body to the beer, but without the sweetness, if
Right,
that
right,
makes
right.
sense.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it just rounds it out nicely. Something else actually I haven't mentioned yet, because I like to always give it a bit of a like little twist to the beers. This batch now I added some dark jaggery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit of that Indian
a
touch
little
to
bit
it.
of a dark jaggery, yeah, which was just added on the hot side and a
Right.
boil.
This beer is like not one dimensional. Like you can get a little bit of complexity from the malt,
Mm.
and like even the traditional versions can have like any like you said the layers of malts. Like
Yeah,
you have like any base malt, like pale malt or pilsner malt, or some aromatic malts,
yeah,
some crystal malts maybe,
yeah,
and maybe some sugar adjuncts just to help with the attenuation, right? Just to
yeah,
get that dry finish and boost up the
yeah.
alcohol a little bit.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and the only other malt that I haven't mentioned yet is for color, but again, I think it gives just a touch again of like little layer of flavor is some chocolate malt,
Right.
just
Just a
to
tiny bit, just
deepen the
to
color, but
right.
also just to get a little hint of something else in there as
I mean, it's
well.
like copper with like this reddish hue, and
Yeah,
it kind of
yeah.
glows in the glass. You know.
I mean, once it's held up to light, you'll get that really
There you go.
nice,
Yeah.
like just that subtlety of
Right.
like a reddish glow there.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, yeah,
Yeah.
cheers, man. It has these layers of you know, uh, just malt sweetness, fruitiness. Um, as it warms up, which I'm sure we're tasting now,
Yeah.
this is where you're starting to get that spice character from the yeast. The farmhouse yeast is
Oh,
showing
that's just
itself.
like a little touch of that peppery thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. I see what you mean. It's more like a softer, like white pepper. It's not like black pepper dish.
yeah,
So I think that complements the whole malt profile because it's just in the background.
Yeah.
I really like it, and even the malt flavors, like those toasted bready notes,
Mm.
they're like so calming. They're
Yeah.
like not sharp.
Mm.
They're like so mellowed and like so calming.
Yeah.
That's something I really love about this one. Talking about the beer style differences, like uh, especially with the saison, like which saison is like hoppy and bitter, and this is like malty and
Yeah.
cleaner
Yeah.
comparatively.
Yeah. If you brew a paler version of a Bière de Garde, you might play more on that breadiness, maybe it's honey notes.
And your
Yeah.
bitterness and the hops can come through even more because of the lack of malt complexity in the lighter versions of Bière de Garde.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But it should never be like a saison.
No,
Yeah.
it's not going to be as punchy as
Yeah. So you
as a
even for
saison.
the lighter versions, like you should get that malt notes, and
Yeah.
you should have
There
like a
should be,
malty
yeah.
flavor balance.
And that just that bit of that sweetness purely from the ABV as well is going to sort of give a bit of that weightiness to the beer too. Play on that, not just the residual sugars from what's left after fermentation, but the ABV, and they're not as dry beers. So even a high gravity saison is always going to feel much more sort of dry and potentially hoppy if that's what you're going for.
Right.
Yeah, because they are much drier beers.
So what was like if you look at the process of like mashing? Did it involve any kind of like step mashes or like was it
I
like
didn't like this. This is purely just single infusion.
single infusion
Yeah, and then mash out.
Mhm.
Um,
And the boil?
boil, regular boil. This one was a longer boil, 75 minutes. But again, nothing too crazy. Water wise, at least like touching on the water chemistry.
Yep.
Good question.
That's
I'm
essential,
trying to
right? Like
I'm trying to tap into my hazy memory, but typically for a beer like this, I will err on more the higher side of the chlorides.
chlorides, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
That can like round out the malt.
Yeah, and it also helps again with a bit of mouthfeel in there.
Right. Like you just
It is quite simple. Like nothing too out there when it came to like treating water and like your salts.
like you said, like even with the fermentation, like colder fermentation and
Yeah.
longer aging, like cellaring or like even like the conditioning temperatures are like at 0 degrees Celsius or something.
Yep,
It's like
condition.
super cold.
So for the Bière de Garde, I give a minimum of 2 months.
2 months, yeah.
So it just helps it round out. And really different.
I think the
beers.
average is like minimum of like 4 to 6 weeks.
Sometimes with these sort of beers, they they almost kind of tell us when it's ready. You know what I mean?
Yep. The best thing about this beer is like as it gets warmer, I get that kind of that peppery note in the background, and that's really complementing these malt flavors like toasted bread and a little bit of that nutty flavors and I also get some like dried fruit.
Yep.
I'm not saying like it's not like
I know.
extremely dark fruit, but maybe like golden raisins or like something in the lines of
totally.
that. A
Totally.
little bit of that fruity element. I think that's playing really well with this malt. It's like medium bodied and like it's got like a really smooth texture and even the carbonation is like not super high.
And it is intentionally a little bit on that lower side.
Right. One thing I think when I started reading about this style, it really hit me in comparing this one with some of the styles, like not the saison, but I'm thinking of like a doppelbock. So it's like so similar in the grist.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting some kind of that toasty bready elements and like doppelbock is obviously clean and it's lagered, but if a beer de garde is made in a similar way, like with the lager yeast at those colder temperatures, like you might not get a lot of that fermentation flavors, and it could be confused with something like a doppelbock. Have you had like a classic beer de garde before, like from?
I did, and is it
this one La Choulette and Jen Lane? Yeah, this one.
So the Jen Lane I've had.
I think that's amber, right? The amber. The color.
Yeah, it is amber.
Yeah. I think this is amazing, and the reason we're doing this video is because this is such an underrated style, and I feel like I want to acknowledge brewers and the places that make the style, because it's like there's no reason that you shouldn't drink this beer. Like it's got all that drinkability, and it's perfect for the winters. Make sure you grab this beer before it's gone. So see you for the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.